Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Deep Read. I'm Mike, and with me as always is Emily.
It's good to be here, Mike.
So today we're going to be taking a look at Another Word for Love by Carvell Wallace. This is
Ooh.
one that you sent in, Emily. And I have to say, just even looking at it, looks like it's going to be quite a journey.
It is, and in ways that I wasn't really expecting.
Yeah.
Wallace's story is just so raw and honest. It really makes you think about all the different ways we experience love and express love throughout our lives.
Yeah, definitely. So the book starts out with his childhood, and right off the bat, I mean, it's pretty intense. He talks about experiencing homelessness as a child,
Yeah.
a complicated relationship with his mother, and even being molested. There's this one anecdote that really stuck with me. He describes living in a one-bedroom apartment with his mother,
Mm.
and they only had a bunk bed and a rocking chair.
Yeah. I think that image really stayed with me, too. Just this powerful symbol of the instability and the poverty that marked his early years.
It's heartbreaking to think about a child growing up in that kind of environment, and it makes you wonder how anyone could come out of that experience unscathed.
Right. Exactly. But there's this sense of resilience that shines through, even in those really, really dark moments.
Yeah. I think that's what's so fascinating about Wallace's story. It would be so easy to get bogged down in the trauma,
Right.
but he somehow manages to find these glimmers of hope and beauty amidst the chaos.
It's like he's searching for connection and belonging in every corner of his life, even when those things seem impossible to find.
Absolutely. Like he talks about his fascination with wearing women's clothing as a child and how he even envisioned himself as a woman he could feel safe with. It's such a poignant detail, and it really speaks to that yearning for love and security, especially from a female figure. Right. And it's interesting how he connects that experience to the societal expectations of masculinity
Right.
that he was wrestling with. It makes you realize how these norms can be so limiting and even damaging, especially for young boys who are trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah. You see that throughout the book. Wallace constantly pushing back against these narrow definitions of what it means to be a man. He's not afraid to show vulnerability, to express his emotions, to embrace those parts of himself that society might deem unmanly.
Right. And that vulnerability really comes through in his descriptions of the racism that he faced. The incident where he had a gun pointed in his face is just terrifying. He describes like his body going numb, almost like he detached from the situation to survive it.
It's a chilling reminder of the constant threat that Black men face in America just by existing in their own skin. Makes you think about the deep-seated trauma that comes with being Black in a society that's still so divided along racial lines.
Yeah. And it's not just the overt acts of racism. It's the subtle ways that prejudice seeps into every aspect of life. He talks about the feeling of being constantly watched, judged, and underestimated because of his race.
A heavy weight to carry. It's no wonder that he sought escape in drugs and alcohol at times. He even describes using substances to feel like a human being rather than a rat king of fears and insecurities.
Wow. That's powerful. That image is so powerful. It really highlights how addiction can be a desperate attempt to cope with overwhelming pain and trauma.
But he doesn't romanticize addiction. He's brutally honest about the dark side, the way that it tore apart his life and relationships.
Right. And eventually, he does find his way to sobriety. He doesn't sugarcoat that journey either. He talks about the intense cravings, the emotional turmoil, and the constant struggle to stay on track.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that recovery isn't a straight line. It's a process filled with setbacks and triumphs. And it requires a tremendous amount of courage and resilience. And as he's navigating this journey of sobriety, life throws him another curveball. He becomes a father.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that experience seems to shift his whole perspective.
Mm.
It's like becoming a parent gave him
Yeah.
this whole new understanding of his own parents, especially his mother.
Absolutely. He starts to see their struggles and sacrifices in a different light. And he reflects on how he judged his mother for her financial struggles and what he saw as like a lack of responsibility, and even admits to resenting her for it when he
Yeah.
was younger.
It's so relatable. I mean, we all have those moments where we look back on our teenage selves
Yeah.
and cringe a little, but it's like we were seeing our parents
Yeah.
through this narrow lens of our own limited experience.
Totally. And what's interesting is how Wallace connects that teenage resentment to the societal expectations of masculinity that he had internalized. He realizes that he was taught to view women as unreliable and emotional, to disapprove of them in a way,
Yeah.
which makes you think about how deeply ingrained these patriarchal ideas can be and how they can poison even our closest relationships.
Right. It's not just about gender roles. It's about how we perceive and judge people who are struggling. He learns to see his mother as a whole person with her own complexities and flaws. and he starts to understand the immense pressure that she was under.
There's this incredibly moving scene where Wallace receives a letter from his mother after she passes away. It's just this simple expression of love and pride, but it hits him hard, reminding him of the deep bond they shared, despite all the challenges.
It's a reminder that even in the most complicated relationships, love can endure. And it's something he clearly wants to pass on to his own children. He talks about the joys and struggles of parenting and the importance of breaking free from cycles of trauma to create a stable and loving environment for his kids.
But he's also honest about the fact that creating that kind of environment isn't easy, especially given the world we're living in, you know? His story takes us right into the heart of the pandemic, the anxieties, the isolation, the social and political upheavals. That defines that era.
Yeah. You can feel the tension and uncertainty of that time in his writing. He even talks about being tear-gassed alongside his children during the Black Lives Matter protests and witnessing their growing awareness of systemic racism.
It's a stark reminder that even when you try to shield your children from the harsh realities of the world, sometimes you can't. And it forces him to confront some really difficult questions about what it means to raise Black children in a society that is still grappling with its own racist legacy.
And it's not just about race. He talks about the collective anxieties we all face during the pandemic, the fear of illness, the isolation, the economic uncertainty. You know, it was a time of reckoning for so many of us, a time to confront our own mortality and the fragility of the systems we rely on.
And amidst all of that chaos, Wallace finds solace in some unexpected places. He talks about the simple joys of baking bread, tending to his plants, reconnecting with old friends. There's this sense that he's trying to find grounding and stability in the midst of all the uncertainty.
He even dives deep into music, analyzing the artistry of Donna Summer and Solange. It's fascinating how he connects music to his own personal journey and how he uses it to explore themes of identity, race, and resilience.
What I found really insightful was his observation about how Black women in music have often been denied the same level of critical acclaim as their white male counterparts. He's challenging us to reconsider our assumptions and appreciate the brilliance that's often overlooked. It makes you wonder what else we might be missing because of our own biases and blind spots.
Right. There's a lot to unpack there. And it speaks to a larger conversation about cultural appropriation and the ways that power dynamics play out in the music industry. It's like he's peeling back the layers to reveal the systemic issues that are often hidden beneath the surface.
And then there's the ending of the book, which isn't really a neat and tidy resolution, but rather a series of reflections on life, love, and the search for meaning. He talks about finding beauty in unexpected places, like the resilience of an amaryllis bulb, blooming after a long dormancy.
That image is so powerful. And it speaks to the book's overall message of hope and resilience. It's a reminder that even after loss, heartbreak, and hardship, life goes on. There's this cyclical nature to it, a constant process of renewal and transformation.
It reminds me of that quote, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." But it's not just about surviving, it's about finding a way to thrive, even in the face of adversity.
Right. And he even manages to find those moments of beauty and connection. There were pretty unsettling scenarios. There's this one scene where he's driving through a smoky orange sky caused by wildfires, and it feels like he's witnessing the end of the world.
It's a haunting image that really captures the anxieties of our time, the uncertainty we all face with climate change and social unrest. But even in that moment, he finds solace in the music of Mos Def playing in his car and the memory of a loved one.
It's like he's reminding us that even amidst chaos and destruction, love can persist, and that even the smallest things can bring us comfort and hope.
And then there's this seemingly simple anecdote about watching a friend meticulously prepare a dish of herbs. But it becomes this profound meditation on slowing down, savoring the present moment, and finding joy in the ordinary.
Oh, you mean the story about the dill? I love that part. It's like he's saying, hey, look around. There's beauty and wonder in the everyday if you just take the time to notice it.
Exactly. It's a reminder to pay attention, to appreciate the small things, to be fully present in our lives. And it ties into that larger theme of finding meaning and connection in unexpected places.
And that leads us to the final line of the book, which really packs a punch. I wonder if this simple and pure way of seeing is, in fact, another word for love.
Wow, it gives you chills, doesn't it? It's such a simple yet profound statement. It makes you think about what it means to see the world with simplicity and purity, and how that connects to love. It's like he's challenging us to strip away the layers of judgment and prejudice, to see the inherent worth and dignity in every being.
Yeah. It's like he's saying that True love requires us to see beyond the surface, to connect with the essence of who someone is,
Mm.
even in their imperfections. And that's such a powerful message, especially in a world that can feel so divided and judgmental.
And it's a love that requires effort, a conscious choice that we make every day. He talks about the work of unlearning harmful patterns, confronting his own biases, and choosing to be more compassionate, even when it's hard.
Yeah. It makes you realize that love isn't just a feeling, it's an action. It's about showing up for yourself and others, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable.
Exactly. And that brings us to another key takeaway from the book: vulnerability. Think about it. Wallace is unflinchingly honest about his struggles, his fears, his moments of doubt. He doesn't try to present this perfect version of himself. He shares the messy parts too. And in doing so, he gives us permission to do the same.
This is one part that really struck me. He talks about attending a sex party and having this realization that he'd spent much of his life having sex out of obligation
Yeah.
or fear of hurting someone's feelings rather than genuine desire.
It's such a raw and vulnerable admission. It really makes you think about how societal expectations, particularly for men, can lead to this disconnection from our own needs and desires. We're often taught to suppress our emotions and prioritize the needs of others above our own.
And it's a cycle he's actively trying to break. He talks about learning to say no, to set boundaries, and to prioritize his own well-being. It's inspiring to see someone engage in that kind of self-reflection and growth.
It makes you wonder how different our relationships in society could be if we all embraced that level of honesty and
For
vulnerability.
sure. And, even though the book ends on a note of uncertainty, there's this underlying current of hope. It's like he's saying, I don't have all the answers, but I'm still searching, still striving to be better, to love more fully.
And that's the beauty of Another Word for Love. It's not a self-help book with all the answers, but it's an invitation to join Wallace on his journey of self-discovery. It encourages us to embrace vulnerability and to keep searching for meaning and connection in a world that can often feel fragmented.
It's a book that will definitely stay with me. It's thought-provoking, challenging, and ultimately incredibly moving.
Couldn't agree more.
So for anyone listening, if you're looking for a book that will make you think, feel, and maybe even see the world a little differently, I highly recommend Another Word for Love by Carvell Wallace.
Definitely worth the read.
And that's it for our deep dive on Another Word for Love. If this resonated with you, if there's a part that really stuck with you, we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, tell a friend, and of course, subscribe to The Deep Read for more insightful discussions on the books that are shaping the way we think and live.
Thanks for listening, everyone.